Hello and welcome back to another fantasy football video. Hope you're all doing nice and well. We don't have very long left until the game week 8 deadline. Now a lot of people this week have hit their wild cards. I am one of those people. This team today is not the kind of final 100% finished product, but the majority of the players in there will be starting in my game week 8 team, and at least the structure I think is going to stay the same unless I have a last minute epiphany, which I very much do doubt. If you're new around here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. It really does help me out. And let's get right on into this one. So you can see from the structure here that I've gone with the 3 at the back. I just looked at the teams defensively this week and I didn't really see that many clean sheets, to be honest with you. I think Manchester City, one of the more standout options for a potential of a clean sheet, playing against a Wolves side who struggled to score goals this season, but I've just gone for the one Manchester City defender. Not only do we sort of not really know who is going to play in that Manchester City defence, apart from Cancelo, there are also a couple of other Manchester City players that I've picked, which maxes us out at 3 players, so I've just gone with the Cancelo at the back there. You can see that we've gone for the 2 Newcastle defenders, a very popular double up this week of Pope and Trippier. I've seen some people go for the 3rd defender for Newcastle. I don't really know who I'd pick because we've seen a bit of rotation between the likes of Dan Burn, Shaw and Botman, so I think it would have to be one of those 3 that you went for. I've seen people going for Botman as he started the previous game, so potentially likely that he will be starting the next one. Newcastle, not surprisingly, are the team that are most likely to keep a clean sheet this week, or at least are predicted to do so. Nick Pope showing some of the form that he showed under Burnley, picking up plenty of saves, most notably in the game against Crystal Palace where he managed to pick himself up 9 saves and 3 bonus points. Trippier also not too bad for bonus points either, and does have his fair share of free kicks and set pieces. I've then gone for Patterson for Everton. As I said, there aren't really too many teams this week who I'm really expecting to keep a clean sheet, and with Everton having a home fixture and actually having not looked too bad defensively so far this season, they've conceded 5 goals, but they conceded 1 goal in each of every of the first 5 games, and then managed to keep a clean sheet against Liverpool. And with the introduction of Tarkowski and Cody at the defence, they've really shored up that back line, with Lampard now seemingly starting to get things to kind of tick a little bit more at Everton. I think that Patterson could actually be a decent shout this week. Then moving on into the midfield, I'm going to start off with Leon Bailly, because a lot of people I've seen this week picking Andreas over Bailly. I've gone for Bailly just because the last 2 games he's got full 90 minutes and he's basically played as a striker. He did score in that home game against Manchester City, and as you can kind of tell, I try to favour the home teams more often than not, because teams are more likely to score and more likely to keep clean sheets at home. Now, Andreas does have Nottingham Forest away, which is arguably the better fixture, because Forest this season are statistically the worst defence. However, I don't think Southampton at home is that much worse of a fixture, and as I say, it being at home does give Bailly a massive advantage for me over the likes of Andreas. Now, I am tempted to play Andreas as well as Bailly. As you can see there, I've gone for Alan St. Maximan. There is some news coming out that he is potentially still injured, and so I could do many things with this spot. I could go down to like an Almiron. I've even tempted with the likes of Joe Linton. I know he hasn't really done much this season, but he's playing 90 minutes week in, week out, and if there's any game where Joe Linton's going to pop up and score a goal, you'd expect it to be against Bournemouth, one of the weakest sides defensively so far this season. I'm also tempted to go with the likes of Anthony Gordon, scored 2 goals so far this season, although I feel like he scores more often than not when they're on the counter-attack, and although West Ham will step to them, Everton will be at home, so I almost feel like that to somewhat degree works against Anthony Gordon in the kind of way in which he likes to get forward and score goals. But for now, I'm going with Alan Saint-Maximin, with the potential even of dropping that down to Andreas, because out of them all, the only reason I really wouldn't pick Andreas is because of the price tag. At 4.6 million, you sort of almost feel like you have to go for, say, a Joel Linton because he's 6 million, but Andreas this season has actually been outscoring the majority of those players, sitting at 4.6 million. Then you can see we've gone for Kevin De Bruyne of Manchester City, a very popular pick this week. I feel as though everyone's kind of looked at the fixtures and just gone, right, the only premium assets really that are playing this week are De Bruyne, Haaland, Son and Kane. Those are the kind of big four players that I've seen mainly put into drafts, less so Son. Plenty of people have gone for Kane. I made a premium draft earlier in the week that managed to fit in De Bruyne, Kane and Haaland, and you know what, I actually quite like the look of it, but going forward I wanted to provide myself with a little bit more depth, which we will come on and talk about in a minute. Then gone for Martinelli. As soon as I saw that Arsenal were playing this week, I just thought, you know what, Martinelli's 100% staying in my team. He looks very dangerous so far this season, and now that Rodrigo has been injured, at that kind of price bracket, he is just clear of any other player. Starting at 6 million, price rising up to 6.5 million, and there's sort of no real reason why that's actually not going to continue. Arsenal and Manchester City obviously do blank in a game week 12 playing against each other, so that is something that we will have to think about. But for now, I've not kind of loaded myself up on too many Arsenal players with that sort of in mind, and they don't actually have the best of fixtures either. But I just kind of looked at it and I was like, after the international break, they've got Spurs at home, Liverpool at home, 2 home games, so not the worst in the world. And also, you look at that Liverpool fixture, it's red on the fixture ticker, but Martinelli is going to be absolutely bombing it down that left-hand side where Trent is at, and Trent has been woeful defensively so far this season. So I could actually see Martinelli picking himself a few points up in that game. Then moving on into the attack, I went for Ivan Toney. I was debating going for Isaac over Ivan Toney, but in the, sort of looking more in terms of the long term, I do like Ivan Toney more as a pick. He has the home fixture this week against Arsenal, and then after that plays against Bournemouth, and then has just, I'd say, not really good fixtures, but either not really bad fixtures either, just a nice consistent run. And that's what I kind of want from a player. I want a player that I can just stick there week in, week out, and I'm just going to get their points whenever they do score. That's kind of the idea with this front three with Haaland and Mitrovic. Obviously, Haaland is 100% going to be in the team. You can't not have him, and you almost can't not captain him. With that in mind, I feel as though going forward that actually although it doesn't make things that interesting in terms of captaincy, it means that you can have a bit more fun in terms of rotation around other players, because you don't necessarily need to have another premium asset because you're not going to captain them. If you're not going to captain a premium asset, it sort of degrades their value a little bit. Now, obviously, we're looking for consistent points, and the premium players arguably more likely to provide them. But so far this season, a lot of the kind of cheaper assets have been keeping up with those boys. And finally, we have Alexander Mitrovic there, filling out our first 11, playing against Forest away. Another player like Toney that I will just be keeping until we get that World Cup. For the World Cup, not only has he been absolutely smashing it thus far this season, scoring 6 in 6, but Fulham's fixtures after the international break look extremely tidy. From 11 to 14, they have 3 home games playing against Bournemouth, Aston Villa and Everton. So it's also another reason why I'm potentially thinking of getting Andreas instead of Saint-Maximin in that spot, just because, you know, in the long term, they do have much better fixtures. And finally, filling us out on the bench, I've gone for Everton over Danny Ward. I feel as though Danny Ward will at some point get a bench for Everton. Leicester's clean sheet potential. Leicester have not managed to keep a clean sheet so far this season. You could argue that defensively, the majority of the time, they don't look that great, but also Danny Ward is a big part of that, and he's not really looked particularly convincing in goal. So I feel as though if I go for Danny Ward he will actually likely get a price drop, and I've already lost quite a lot of value on play so far this season, so I've got to think about it a little bit. We've gone for Maddison there as well as our first substitute, playing at Spurs away this week, so I didn't really fancy playing him in this game week. But after the international break, my word, Leicester's fixtures get really, really nice. I mean, just straight after, they have Forest at home, Bournemouth away, and I mean, yeah, I just looked at it and I was just like, you know what, I want Maddison for that run, so I'm just going to plop him on the bench, and then he can rotate in for one of the midfielders come after the international break. Then I've gone for Collins for Wolves, one of the highest scoring defenders so far this season. Whenever Wolves do keep a clean sheet, he managed to get himself very high on the bonus points, picking up 6 bonus points from 3 clean sheets so far this season. He's been doing extremely well. For me, I'm just looking to play Collins between the period of game week 11 and 13. Trippier from on game week 11 and 13 plays at Spurs and Manchester United away, whereas Collins plays Forest at home and then Leicester at home. 2 fixtures that I kind of back Collins more than I back Trippier to keep a clean sheet. So I just had a look and I was just like, you know what, there's a nice little bit of rotation there. Why don't I think about the longer term as I can at this point in time and just bring Collins in on the bench. Another player that I'm potentially thinking of is Anderson, but with Anderson, he doesn't quite rotate as well, especially with having the final man there, Reece James, on the bench in the Champions League game last night. Reece James was getting so far forward. He almost looked like he did look like Chelsea's most dangerous player, to be honest with you. Absolutely bombing it down that right-hand side. It made me very tempted as well to get Raheem Sterling. It seems as though he's going to be quite an integral part of Graham Potter's sort of formation, the style in which he likes to play, absolutely bombing it down that left-hand side. After watching that game, I was like, you know what? I have to get Reece James in this team. So this is kind of currently how I am lining up for game week 8. Do let me know in the comments how you guys are thinking of lining up, whether you've wildcarded or whether you just, have got a couple of free transfers that you're thinking of making for this coming week. Let me know what your guys' kind of dilemmas or what you're pondering for this week. And if you have enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit that like button, hit the subscribe button if you're new around here, and I'll catch you in the next one. See ya.